Bonjour, good to see you again.
Hi, Joe. Good to see you too. After
Yeah,
2 years.
likewise. Yeah, 2 years. Yeah, last time we did a show together, and I think a lot's changed since then. So excited to get into that. So, yeah, for people who don't know who you are, do you want to give a quick intro?
Yeah, of course. So I'm the co-founder and CEO of Airbyte. I moved in the US about 12 years ago. Always worked in the data space, internet scale, IoT scale, finance scale, and yeah, started Airbyte in 2020. And yeah, we do data integration, and we have an open source product. So helping company move data from point A to point B.
Mhm.
Always a big data guy and been following everything that has happened in the data space for the past 20 years, I'd say.
Yeah, and a lot's been happening. I would say, especially. We'll get into this in a bit, but definitely the last I don't know, several months, I would say, has been
Yeah.
a sort of a sea change in things, which we could talk about. But yeah, I mean, since our last chat, I mean, we talked, right? I think as you had started Airbyte and, we're getting that off the ground. But walk me through that. What's happened since?
Yeah. So I think we talked end of 2021 or mid 2021 or something like that. So at the time, it was very much the early days of Airbyte. So just
Yeah, super
getting
early.
getting open source off the ground, building the community. Actually, the thing when we talked, we had that um, that's when we had hit an inflection point and the team
Hmm.
was frozen basically because we had to build a product, but the community was way too big for us to handle. So it was this time period where we're really struggling on, hey, we don't have enough people in the team. But yeah, since then, yeah, we raised a fairly large round at the end of 2021 and we officially launched our cloud product at the time. I think it was in April. I would say from April to September, it was like the very early version of cloud. Now it's a way more mature product. And yeah, we've brought a few more people into the team. The community has, I don't know, like we have like about 15,000 people on our Slack. So, and at the time we were probably around 1,000. So grown pretty
Yeah.
quickly and pretty fast. And same thing for usage of Airbyte. But yeah, that's been a pretty intense journey. And yeah, the big focus on how do we monetize Airbyte. So that was a big topic for us in 2022 and 2023.
Yeah. I mean, how do you monetize an open source project? I actually get a kick out of talking to founders who have open source and then, working on the paid model. I'd love to get your perspective on this.
Yeah. So I mean, I think there is a model that exists today. I mean, you can see like what Mongo does, what Elastic does, what GitLab does, which is most all of them have a cloud offering, and all of them have let's call it like an enterprise or extra features on top of open source that people can self-manage. And we're following a pretty similar pattern. I would say that the difference that we've taken is that we actually build cloud before building the support piece or the extra features on top of open source for self-managed instances. So that was a bit of the difference, and yeah, the goal there was just getting more people to use Airbyte. So even if you cannot operate Airbyte, you still have an opportunity to use it, and cloud was there for that.
Hmm. Interesting. And I guess in your experience, what motivates people to switch from, what do you think is a really good open source product to the paid product? Like what are
Yeah.
those triggers?
So I would say like from going to open source to cloud, there is a bridge that we don't have yet. Like if we look at our audience on open source and cloud, very different audiences.
Mm.
But if you look at how we monetize services and features on top of open source, in general, it's as people put more critical pipeline on Airbytes, that generally becomes a trigger for them. Like where, I don't know, some director of engineering or some data leader is going to say, okay, what is that thing that we're using that is pushing all that data into a warehouse? Okay, how are we paying them? Do we have any support? What happens if it breaks? So that's for me, that's generally for us the first trigger. And for quite a while, we were just saying no to this type of opportunities, and we really started because we wanted to focus on cloud, and now we're just taking them out.
Mm-hmm.
But it generally starts with, hey, it's a critical pipeline. My whole team depends on it. My company depends on it. I need more than just downloading the project from GitHub.
What are you seeing these days? I mean, obviously there's an economic pullback. Data teams are trying to do more with less. Or how's that affecting like the community and the cloud?
Yeah. So people are very price sensitive right now. And we actually see that whether it's on cloud, where it's users of other competitors that are looking for an alternative that is cheaper. Because today, yes, we are cheaper than the competition. But on open source, actually, it's just either teams get reduced on data teams or the budget is shrinking. And at that point, there is an appeal to using an open source software in the sense that it saves you like development time, it saves you like building time. And at the same time, yes, you have other costs. I mean, you still need to maintain and operate Airbyte, but you can just get it up and running and boom, you have value out of it. And then if you start putting more critical pipeline, then you start allocating budget to Airbyte. Mm-hmm. But it's nice to have that open source motion in an environment where people are more price sensitive and budget sensitive.
Right, that makes sense. I guess, is there any notion of like some sort of strategy to win over the people who are using the open source? Like maybe when the next upturn happens and everybody, money's falling from the sky again. Is there sort of some sort of plan to capture that audience there?
Yeah.
You don't have to get into specifics, obviously, but I'm just curious.
I mean, definitely. Like for us, the goal with open source is really to land in as many companies as possible. And current environment makes the land easier because, well, you download, it works, it's free, you can get it up and running. What we see, and actually we see it a little bit like in some of the like AI companies and things like that, which is the moment they get more budget for focusing on data, then the fact that we've landed is it's automatically migrated to a paid like pro version because they have the budget. So what we see is just landing and taking advantage of the current environment for landing fast. And then when things pick back up, we will be there. Like people build on top of it. So they're not just going to replace something for something else if they've been running with it for like the past year or the past 2 years.
Got it. Speaking of AI companies, you had an announcement, this is recorded on August 9th here, but you mentioned that you're starting to do a lot more stuff with AI. Do you want to talk about that? I think this is more of what I'm interested in, actually. So
yeah. So okay, I live in San Francisco. Like right now, I'm not in San Francisco. I'm spending time with my kids in Palm Springs, but I'm normally in San Francisco. So I was able to attend a few AI meetups over the past few months, and just trying to get a sense of what the audience looks like and what the profiles of people look like and what do they know and don't know about data. And I would say the first meetup I did was a disaster because I was explaining ETL to an audience that doesn't know what ETL actually is. They just know about LLM, they know about model, but they don't think about how did the data actually arrive there. They really focus on like, how do I do my prompt engineering? How do I build my application? But actually feeding the data is always a given for them. Because someone else is doing it for them. So when I did that meetup, I had to basically re-explain what does extract, transform, load actually means and why it's important, especially as you're building apps that work with your own internal data. How do you inject your data into your AI app? So we basically built a destination for Vector Store, which is today the repository where all these apps read data from. And yeah, we announced yesterday our ability to just move data from any of the sources that we have on Airbyte, so about like 300 into vector stores. And we're starting with we have Pinecone, we have Chroma, and a few others. So that's a big deal. But it's really about making sure that as people develop new stack and new framework on AI, they don't reinvent a technology that already exists, which is pulling data from sources and bringing it to a destination. So that's mostly the desire here.
Very interesting. What are I guess what prompted this? It's a bit of a change. I don't see a lot of the other integration companies or projects out there focusing on vector databases, for example. Like, what was the aha moment for you?
Yeah. So first, like the first one was that the meetup is people are looking are just rebuilding. They're basically rebuilding data connectors.
Well, what are they doing right now?
Like that's what they're doing. Like you look at, I mean, if you look at what LangChain does or what Llama Index does, like this like higher level framework for building AI apps, they all have that loader and reader component. So they are rebuilding like these small integrations, but they already exist. They are either they're like on a random GitHub or like they're on our like Airbyte GitHub. So why reinvent something? And it makes sense that they are doing it. It's just they are starting from scratch. It's a white page in front of them where they have to build the framework for building application and connecting pieces together. And their community is actually asking them, hey, I want to import my data from Notion. What do I do? And so they just hack a small connector for pulling data from Notion. And obviously, this is a trend that we're seeing, and we want to make sure that people know that in the data space, not in the AI space, but in the data space, this solution already exists. How do we bring them and make AI app developer aware that they can bring data from anywhere and they don't have to rebuild loader? So for us, that was a bit of the aha moment, is seeing that these frameworks are rebuilding things that we already have and that they can get from either vendors or from other open source projects. And just how do we connect the two dots together? If that makes sense.
Yeah, I'm really curious. Like, what would have happened if you didn't show up to that meetup?
Good question. I don't know. I mean, they would continue to build loader and readers and for pulling data from sources. So just, hey, we have 300 of them. We have tooling to do it. Just use toolings that we have and join our data community. For me, it's just that these two communities are little bit disjoint. Like the AI community and the data community are disjoint. It's not the same thing. It's just one is infrastructure, the other one is application building. And we just need to bridge the gap between these two communities.
I totally agree. I was actually speaking at a meetup last night about this, and it made the point that it feels like right now, well, the discussion was really about how developers and data are separate. I also mentioned that AI is actually separate from data. There are some questions on that too, but I made the call too that I feel like these worlds are going to collide at some point very soon because they kind of have to. Like I think these artificial distinctions are causing just a lot of unnecessary friction. Especially when the end goal, LLMs are hot. They're probably going to go through a bubble, but I certainly don't see them going away as a thing. Like they're here, they have a lot of utility, and same with a lot of other AI applications. And I think your serendipitous meetup, I think that was very fascinating for that reason, where you just caught onto something like this community doesn't know about ETL. Hey, I know about ETL. I guess now it's I don't know, AI
but
ETL.
The thing is, they know about ETL. It's just they have not given it a name, like a formalized name. It's just I need to bring data, but that's what in the data space we call ELT or ETL.
Yeah, exactly. It's been around for a while. That's really fascinating. I mean, but walk me through this though. So you have disjoint communities. you have disjoint ways of explaining things. Like AI, people probably have their own way of thinking about loading data. Like, how do you plan to address the communication gaps and sort of the knowledge gaps between the two?
Yeah. So for us, I mean, obviously our strength is pulling data from somewhere, bringing it somewhere else. So at that point, it's just, okay, what is the point of intersection between these two communities? And when you look at most of the AI apps that are being built today, most of them rely on just talking to a vector data store because that's where the data is stored and that's how it's retrieval for the app that they are building. So for us, it's just, okay, this is the intersection point between these two communities. Let's put all the communication and all our product building on this point of intersection. And after that, it's just, okay, working with partners in the ecosystem to create, like, let's call it like a template stack for how do you go from I have data somewhere to I have a bot on Slack that answers questions, and just giving them like a bit of a skeleton of what an application could look like, and just like educating at that point on ETL, ELT, vector stores, etc. But just starting from this middle point of vector store for us has been pretty good.
That's
Because
interesting.
that's a common knowledge on both on the data side and on the AI side.
Right. I guess what were some of the challenges of making that jump into vector databases? Because these are not the same things as Snowflake, for example. They're not
Yeah,
not even close. So.
yeah, that is true. So we have a very simple model on moving data from point A to point B. Like we try to never transform the data, never do anything. And that's actually the complexity we have with integrating with vector store. And before you can push something into a vector store, you need to compute embeddings for the text. So you need to take the piece of data, you need to send it to an embedding API or just compute some, compute your vector, your embedding, and just then you can push it. And for us, that's an extra step that is not native to how Airbytes operate. And because it's E and L, like transformation generate comes later. And also when you do your embeddings and where you break up your text, sometimes you need to split your text in a way that is a little bit aware of the type of text you're splitting. If it's an HTML document, maybe you want to split by paragraph, maybe you want to split by H1 or H2 or whatever. And so this is today something that we have fully put into our destination integration. So people can tune that on the integration, but it's a bit of a workaround on our model, which is we do a little bit of transformation before we send the data to a vector store, which is embedding and text splitting. Now, what we want to see is how the community is taking that product, making it its own, and figure out, okay, how do we better structure the chunking, the splitting, the embedding in an EL world. And for us, that's more like product discovery that we need to do. But today, yeah, all that logic is managed by the destination.
Really interesting. This is a pretty big pivot, then. I mean, because it's. I mean, in my opinion, I don't know about you, but it seems like this is sort of portends like a completely different future from just providing data for, I don't know, reports and dashboards. Because now you're potentially powering data apps.
Correct.
So.
Okay, I wouldn't call it a pivot, but basically the vision we have when we started Airbyte was just, maybe people are going to be upset that I'm saying that word, but we want to be the sewer of data. We just want, it doesn't matter what kind of data, it doesn't matter what data is coming from, where it's going, we just want to be the pipes in between. And you can be using it for analytics, you can be using it to power and bring more data to Salesforce. That's, for us, it's just data moving from point A to point B. And at that point, at that point, feeding data to AI apps fits that model, which is it's pipe. Yes, Maybe the pipes need to be a little bit smarter, but it remains data movement from point A to point B. So vision-wise, doesn't change anything, but yeah, tactically, it forces us to just think of maybe different types of pipes. But it's a remains data movement for us.
Got it.
It's just a new use case. And I don't know if you want to draw a parallel with let's call GPUs, for example. GPUs were built for games first, and then it's a platform for computing, and then they became a platform for mining crypto, and then they became a platform for LLMs. So it's a platform, and they just figure out, oh, there is a new use case. How can that platform be be leveraged for that particular use case? So we're trying to do the same there.
Have you found any challenges so far in working with like tabular data sets, so rows and columns versus sending text over, kind of raw, unstructured data like that?
Yeah, there is a difference. I would say, and that's something we're actually also bringing, is stronger unstructured sources. I think today, as long as the unstructured data is available through an API, like typically if you pull data from Notion, if you pull data from like Zendesk, if you pull data from any kind of places where you have like raw text, this is something that is already handled. Like we already move this unstructured data, and so that works. Now, if you want to move a PDF from like a repository of PDF or things like that, this is not something we do today. We don't know how to pull PDF because this is it's not an API, it's like purely unstructured. And right. That's something we're actually working on, is how do we connect to this type of new sources, like file type of sources.
It's really interesting. So I guess, kind of zooming to the applications of all this, like what are some things that come to mind? I mean, you use your imagination, but if you're able to pull all these data sources together, like what do you think is possible?
Yeah. I think today we're at the stage where we're doing the flashlight app on the App Store when the App Store started, like, which is, yeah, it's just, we found one where, well, it works 60-70% of the time, which is bring your knowledge base and allow easy Q&A. And I don't think we've figured out yet what are the post flashlight type of application. But what is for sure is that this use case is real. People are using it. And we just want to make sure that, this knowledge-based information is brought to this application. Now, what type of apps comes next? I mean, we're listening to the market and to the community to see what they're building. But this one is just one that is real, and it's already by itself more useful than just a flashlight. So we just want to make sure that we address that use case. I don't know if that's a sufficient response.
I think it's as good of an answer as you're going to be able to give in an environment like this. That's both, I would say, changing very quickly and surprisingly is low information, because you don't have the specific things to focus on. I mean, somebody's probably already got it, but it just isn't out yet. But because it seems like in this field, especially with with AI, all of a sudden it's like the changes are almost daily. And it's almost impossible to keep up. I mean, I've given up trying. I just read a few papers every week and just hope I can at least understand what's going on. But even then, I don't know that's sufficient. But you do what you can. And it's also like separating out like what's complete BS, what's hype versus like what's really going to stick. Like I think what you're mentioning, being able to to move data from point A to B for these applications, like I think that has utility. Like I don't know, there's not much to argue with it on that one, right? So
no, exactly. And it's building an AI apps is not that different from building any other apps. Like we, as software engineer, we know how to build an app. It's always the same thing. You need data somewhere. You need to bring that data to that somewhere, and then you need to connect to that somewhere. That's all. It's just that with AI apps, you have a stronger way of interacting with a human and a better way of understanding what a human is asking. And to me, that's the main difference. But conceptually, it is the same. Like 10,000 feet away, it's the same structure.
Yeah. Do you find yourself toying around with AI apps these days?
Uh, I wouldn't say apps. I mean, yes, apps. Of course, I'm just yesterday I was writing a text, and sometimes okay, I'm not a native English speaker, you can tell. So when I write text, I just write it very quickly. But now I have a place where I can just put my text on and say, "Hey, keep the same structure, just fix all the grammar and style," and boom, I have an amazing text in front of me. I review it, but it's generally good. So that's for me the basic use case for AI app. I have to say I took some time in July. I was on PTO with my family, and I played a little bit like building an actual AI app, just trying to understand, okay, what does it mean to build an app? Where are things working and where are they breaking? My goal at the time was, can I generate Airbyte connectors from
Oh,
just
really?
feeding a piece of documentation? Like, can I understand what the documentation is saying? And can I extract, like, how do I do pagination? How do I do like authentication? How I do like slicing of the data? How do I understand the data model? So I tried to do it. Well, I won't say I succeeded, but I got to something at least.
What did you learn in that process?
Yeah. And that goes back to what I was saying before, which is everything around how you import that external data into your vector database is extremely important because just providing, and especially for a documentation that is as structured as an API documentation, you need to understand a little bit what are the different concepts before you start indexing it, like, or where are the different endpoints located. So yeah, for me, that was the place where at some point there was one use case where I just fall back to just doing normal, regular expression to just figure it out rather
Oh,
than
interesting.
asking to an LLM. But for others, yes, I was trying extract to me how I should do cursor and like pagination for this endpoint. It was able to find me the question. But if I was asking, yeah, give me all the endpoints available, yeah, I better do it with a regex. It's simpler. It works more reliably. But
That's really
keep in
interesting.
mind that's a 1 day experimentation. So
Yeah.
that's that's the time my wife gave me to play with to build an app during our vacation in France.
I mean, it's a pretty generous offer, so actually, very,
It
very
is.
good
It
of
was.
her.
It was. I took it. I took it.
Oh, that's fun. I guess I have another question too that's been on my mind. I'd like your take on this. You have kids. How old are your kids?
9 and 7.
Okay, 9 and 7. Yeah, I got 10 and 13. And I'm thinking about the impact of AI on kids. Kind of switching gears a bit, but this is I don't get to talk to parents that often. And so, what do you think about the impact of that AI is going to have on children?
Yeah. Uh, there is one danger that I see, and I can see it, for example, when I show just the basic chat GPT to anyone, which is before when you're searching something on Google, you have the choice of what answer to pick. So in a way, you exercise judgment on what you're going to believe is true or what you believe is wrong. When you ask the question, and sometimes I do it, like I'm on my chat GPT app and I ask a question. It's much harder for myself to decide if I believe or not what's written.
Mm,
For kids, because they have not been trained by, hey, this is how the world worked before, and this is how you exercise judgment on picking a website or not, like picking your sources. And the fact that it feels like you're talking to a human telling you something sensible, like it feels real when you read it. And I don't know how that will affect the ability to exercise judgment in face of information, because it looks correct. It's well written. It looks like an article. You could put it on Wikipedia, but you have no idea if this is true, because this is not a sentient being. It's not something that was written by an expert. It's something that was automated. And for me, that's going to be a big deal. Is it was already hard for people to balance what is real, what is not, what is true, what is not on the internet. I think at that point, when you ask a question and someone answers you, it becomes really hard to create your own opinion or to exercise judgment. So I don't know how to protect kids. I mean, it was easy before. Like teachers would say, "Hey, you know what? Don't believe everything that's on Wikipedia."
Right.
Well, okay, fine. I exercise a little bit of judgment. I know that, but with ChatGPT, you just ask a question, and if 99% of the time it's correct, what's going to happen when it's the 1% where it's absolute BS or just complete false information? So I don't know. I think we need to watch out for building this ability to have good judgments for our kids.
Yeah, I tend to violently agree with that notion. It's something where I've been. Yeah, it's. I mean, you see this enough with adults right now. They just, I mean, you didn't even need ChatGPT, and they still just read the first result on Google and like, oh, this must be right, or Twitter or something like that. But with kids, they haven't had the foundation of critical thinking and judgment. So it's. I think it's something I've been talking a lot to my friends and my wife about. Just like how do you prepare kids for this age where. I mean, even school in America. I mean, it starts in a couple of weeks, and every kid is going to be using ChatGPT and Bard and whatever else on everything. Doesn't matter what it is, and so it's definitely a big question. I think for parents, like how do you help kids navigate this? I think teaching critical thinking is definitely a thing. I also feel like the way that we teach kids is probably just going to have to be almost inverted in some ways because you already have quote the answers in front of you. Now I think you just need to develop a mechanism to determine if that's actually true or not.
Which actually it's not that bad because it means that now you can focus education on critical thinking rather than the artifact that comes after. So why not? I mean, I wished I had ChatGPT when I was a kid. I don't like to write long text. I write bullet points. So if I could just say, hey, take these bullet points, write something nice, that seems like busy work to me. And I'm glad that I have that. I wish I had that a few years ago. But so it's a real tool. It's just don't believe the tool.
Yeah. I think one thing we've been doing is just putting homework problems into ChatGPT, like especially math story problems. So maybe a good trick for you. And then just having them figure out if it's right or not. And like half the time it's wrong actually. And so it's like, then you're like, okay, so why is it wrong? And that's the homework. And so
that's actually nice. Like, I think you learn a lot by correcting and by understanding why something is wrong. So I can see the reversed education you're saying. Yeah. I mean, we'll see. I don't know if every teacher will embrace that though.
Well, I think most teachers hate it, to be frank. Because it forces them to, because they have their own way of teaching and now they have to sort of reinvent everything. And like in a lot of cases, in America at least, teachers don't have control in a lot of ways of how they teach because it's all, based on what's called Common Core, which is a set of curriculum they have to teach. And so they just kind of have to teach to that method. But but everything changed in November of last year. When ChatGPT came out, and all of a sudden, every student is like, we can do it that way. I'll ace every exam that you have in the process, but it's everything changed. So
but I see that as human beings, we're gaining in efficiency in a way. So we can. It's almost like we can focus on the core value, like the thing that requires critical thinking and putting it in form. Yes, there is, don't get me wrong. I think there is something nice in having a text that is super well written and it's not ChatGPT who wrote it. But I think at some point, most like 95% of the people don't need that level of sophistication on like copy and edit. And for this 95%, that's such a good like productivity tool. And
Oh yeah.
If you're a student and someone is asking you to write a report on, hey, what are the top 3 AI techniques in the world today? Well, you're going to do your research, you're going to understand what it is, but now writing the report, and that's a very boring job. And I don't want to do it, but I want to understand what are the top 3 models, understand them, and then write down what I understood and just ask someone else to do the copy.
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like we're more efficient now with this technology.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, kind of bringing it back to adults, I guess, in the world we operate in. Like, what do you think this does to tech workers? So people that might be working in the modern data stack, for example. Like, what do you think these advances in AI does to that? And also, what do you think the impact is on stuff like the modern data stack?
Yeah. I think it helps executing on the vision of what the modern data stack is supposed to be, which is you're basically taking building blocks, assembling them in a way that works for the audience, like the person who is actually interested in the data. And it used to be only technical people, maybe a few execs. Now the whole company needs to look at that data. And not everybody is fluent in writing SQL, understanding data model, or writing documentation for a specific model. And the same way data warehouses have made it much simpler to work with data rather than Hadoop or like MapReduce or whatever. I think we're just adding a new layer of simplicity for accessing data. And maybe you don't get the same, quality or depth in your analysis, but at least you can get a very good surface understanding of some metrics or some data models, or you can ask some questions. So for me, it's just opening up the world of data to more profiles that will never be able to take a SQL editor and write something. So it's an extension to me. It's like, let's add these additional modules on top of it that makes data more accessible. Which is my definition of modern data stack. We can argue on what is the definition of modern data stack, but to me, it's just building blocks to make data more available.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that notion. I define it as cloud native, modular, democratized access to data. Right. Yeah. So the democratized access to data part's always been, I think, the biggest challenge because there's still a lot of friction involved. I think to your point, it's there's no secret why why SQL classes are very popular, despite the fact that SQL has been claimed to be dead for many times, and somehow it seems to be getting more popular. It's because people need to access the data, right? But that's the only interface you have right now into a database. You can't be able to write SQL. I think up to last year when LLMs became popular, there were some companies like ThoughtSpot that I think put some effort into, sort of having more of a semantic interface with it. But even then, it was so you had to do it in a certain order of operations and so forth. But now I think the lid's been blown off that. And if you can just write native, whatever your language is, French or English or whatever, I mean, it's still early days, but I feel like that's the democratization angle is definitely it's bound to happen. I don't know what's in its way right now. Well, what's in its way is the stuff that you're probably helping working on, which is like getting the data into a vector database. I think that it's one of the big challenges right now because there's all this. I think the big crux too is like there's still a lot of corporate data that's when I'm talking like in enterprise systems and whatnot, might be in your data warehouse now, but it's still making that transition from there to something that an LLM can take advantage of is the
Yeah.
I think that's the next phase of where everything's going. So
Yeah. But to me, we're still missing a small layer in between creating something that doesn't give you something like the wrong information where you believe is correct. So we need that small layer in between how your data is stored, how your application is built, and the level of quality that you expect on the other side. And that's to me the piece that the world needs to be working on today.
Because you have the quality aspects. I mean, quality's just been and governance has been like a horrible problem. Even though right now, I don't think we've still gotten it right. It's actually, I would argue, it's almost gotten worse in some ways. And so, throw a large language model on top of the data sets that exist in a lot of data warehouses today. I'm like, I don't know, you could. Even if the large language model was capable of producing 100% correct results, you'd still probably get really interesting results if your data is messed up. But yeah, there are some. I think there's some trends. There's a really good paper that came out. What was it, July 14th or June 14th, about LLMs and knowledge graphs. Maybe knowledge graphs remove the hallucination problem, but remains to be seen. There's enough attention on this, so you'd think that it's going to get solved, because it's like the hallucination problem. I don't think anyone's going to sit there and say, "Oh, this is awesome. It's fine."
That's actually the blocker for productionizing more AI apps. Is always worked super well on its internal apps, because people used to live in the world without like the chatbot, and they have that judgment piece where they say, "Oh, this answer is not correct. This one is correct." So, like this copilot model is to me the one that works the best today, because you are still involving human intelligence in the decision making process and agreeing or not that this is the right information. But if you want to do something that is 100% automated, we're not there yet. Like I would not trust like building today an Airbyte connector 100% to an AI. I would not. Now,
you gave the example of using a regex, for example.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
Because it works. So.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Are you going to encourage the Airbyte community to start trying to use AI to speed up the production of new connectors, or?
I don't know if that will come from the community or if it will come from us. Like we have a connector editor today that allows us to build connectors fairly quickly from scratch. And what I would want us to add is like tips or information, which is, this is what I found in the documentation. These are the endpoints that I think you could be interested to put in that connector, select or not. So it's more like suggestion that then the person in front of the UI can just say yes, no, yes, no, yes, no, and basically validate. So it's more like information retrieval to develop faster. So this is something I would love for us to get to at some point. And that seems to be the one that it's the best compromise between something fully automated and a copilot, which is, it is just copilot. It is a productivity tool for you to build connector faster, but it doesn't build them for you. So that's how I see us using LLM within the product.
Interesting. Do you see any data providers or I guess connection sources also adopting LLMs? And the reason I'm asking this is because is there a future where all these providers are just basically on some sort of a lang chain and they just connect to each other that way? So.
I don't know. I doubt it.
Yeah.
I doubt it.
Just kind of get your take on that.
Because
it would be interesting for a fully automated world to work. You would almost need to have that sense of awareness of different connectors and just being, I want to connect here, done, send it here, or an automated fashion. Yeah. There's no human intervention whatsoever. So
I think there is always a problem of you're sending proprietary data somewhere.
That's a problem. Yeah.
that is a big one. How do you ensure that your data is not going to leak into like a learning data set or anything like that? And suddenly, boom, your data becomes part of how the model was trained, and your data is available to any answer. So there are a lot of questions that we need to answer before that becomes
That's a
something to
big
think
one.
about.
That's a big one, especially with the new AI Act coming out of Europe. Like that's
Yeah,
nothing to joke about. So
yeah, no, exactly. And now one thing I see that could be interesting is LLM are going to help a lot to me in the analytics world because they allow to have an almost automated way to go from unstructured to structured data, which is, we started to use that internally just as a prototype of, hey, these are all the conversation we have with customers. Tell me if they're happy or not. Just as simple as that, like sentiment analysis. So basically, you're taking this text conversation completely unstructured and you convert it into something that is structured on which you can start building dashboard and reporting. And having that ability to map unstructured to an actual model is going to be very powerful. It's not just about powering LLM. It's just about creating tabular data from text. That's a pretty nice use case.
Yeah, one guy you should talk to is Bill Inman. He had this realization back in the day after he created the data warehouse back in '89 or something like that. He I think in the '90s he was even thinking about text. He's like, why don't we focus on all these small data sets, these corporate ERP systems and whatnot, when all the data is the text data that they have. And I think even early on, he was trying to think of ways, he called it textual ETL, but very interesting early insight from a guy like him. And but he saw the power, and if you can combine tabular data with text data, I mean, that unlocks a ton of stuff. And he showed me some stuff at his house one time. I was like, "Yep, that's pretty legit, actually. If you could combine these two worlds together, it's You really
so this one, I think we're not too far. Like this is probably one place where there is a lot of things that are going to happen because, you have that ability now. And it's not going to be perfect, but as always, data is never perfect, but it will get you to probably 80 or 90% of the value you want. So,
yeah. That's super cool, man. Yeah. I'm excited to see where things go with you guys. Like I said, this wasn't expected. I thought we'd just be talking about being an open source and and the paid vendor, but then you dropped this pretty interesting announcement on me. And I'm like, okay, this is actually really, really fascinating.
To be clear, that was a complete coincidence.
Complete coincidence, for the audience out there. This wasn't planned. Nothing on the show is ever planned, So, but especially this one, it's really cool.
Last Friday, I was at an open source event with YC. So just talking in front of the batch. And they talked a lot about HN, how to launch their company on HN, how to launch their product on HN. Like, the relationship between YC and HN is pretty strong. And that just got me, hey, let's go back to the old days where we were putting everything on HN and let's do one for AI. So we added that to our launch and got picked up. So that's nice. Good to see.
Oh, that's super cool.
Good to see.
Yeah. And the response was good?
Yeah. The response was good. Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, I know. HN has a life of its own, man. When you put something out there, it could go either way. Yeah. So,
exactly.
But congrats on that. That's super cool. Awesome. Well, it's been a great talking to you again. For people who want to find out more about you, how can they do that?
Yeah, Airbyte.com. We also have a community Slack, and like the whole Airbyte team is available in our community Slack. So that's probably the best way to get in contact with us, or just just the website. We have contact form everywhere. So that's probably the best way.
Awesome. That sounds good, man. All right. Well, thanks for being on the show again. Yeah, I'll talk to you soon.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Joe.
Thank you.